The junkyard encounter. The city slept under a pale moon, its lights fading into silence as the night grew heavy. At the edge of this forgotten town stood a place no one cared for anymore. A wide junkyard filled with broken machines, twisted metal, and the rusting remains of a world long past. To most people, it was nothing more than a graveyard of trash, a place where rats and stray dogs fought for scraps. But to Daniel, it was a second home. Daniel was not a rich man. He worked odd jobs during the day and spent his evenings in the junkyard, searching for old parts he could fix and sell. He was quiet, ordinary, the kind of man others often overlooked, but there was something about his eyes, calm yet observant, as if he was always waiting for something unusual to happen. That night, as he pushed through a narrow path between piles of broken cars, he felt it, an unusual stillness, different from the normal silence of the junkyard. He stopped, listening. The wind carried faint noises, not the scratching of rats, not the growl of dogs, something softer. A whisper, a rustle, his heart beat faster. He gripped the small flashlight he carried, its beam slicing through the shadows of steel and rust. For a moment, he thought his imagination was playing tricks on him, but then he heard it again like a faint whimper. Daniel's steps grew cautious. He moved closer to a broken bus half buried in junk. The sound was clearer now, a soft cry almost like a child trying not to be heard. He crouched, steadying his breath, and slowly moved the flashlight. What he saw made him freeze. There, pressed against the wall of the ruined bus, was a small figure. At first glance, it looked like a child, thin and trembling. But as the light fell across her face, Daniel gasped. Her skin was pale silver, faintly glowing under the moonlight. Her large eyes shimmered like liquid crystal, far too bright and strange to belong to any human child. She shrank back, covering her face with thin hands, her body trembling with fear. Daniel's shock deepened when another figure appeared behind her, a woman, tall and slender, with the same silver glow in her skin. Her long hair fell over her shoulders like strands of starlight, but her eyes were sharp, protective. She pulled the child behind her and raised a piece of broken metal like a weapon. Though weak and tired, there was a fierce determination in her stance, the kind only a mother could carry. Daniel's breath caught. Aliens. He had heard rumors, whispers in the city about strange lights in the sky, about beings hiding where humans never looked. But he never believed them until now, and here they were standing before him, desperate and afraid. The mother's voice trembled but carried strength. "Stay back," she warned in broken English. "No harm to us, please." Daniel held up his hands, showing he carried no weapon. His flashlight trembled slightly, not from fear of them, but from the weight of the moment. I won't hurt you," he said softly. His voice was steady, almost gentle. I just heard crying. The child peeked out from behind her mother's arm. Her eyes locked onto Daniel's, wide with hunger and sadness. She looked so fragile, so small, her tiny frame shaking as though even the night's chill was too heavy for her. Daniel's heart twisted. He saw no monster in her, only a starving child who hadn't smiled in a long time. Without thinking, Daniel reached into his worn backpack. He pulled out half a loaf of bread and a small apple, his dinner. Slowly, he placed it on a broken piece of metal between them and stepped back. "Here," he whispered. "Food. For her." The mother hesitated, her sharp eyes never leaving him. For a long moment, silence hung between them, broken only by the wind whistling through the junkyard. Then slowly, she lowered the piece of metal in her hand. The child's curiosity overcame her fear, and she reached forward, taking the bread in her delicate hands. She bit into it hungrily, her eyes filling with relief. The mother's stern expression softened just slightly as she watched her daughter eat. Daniel felt a strange warmth inside him. He had fed strays before, dogs, cats, but never in his life did he imagine he would be feeding an alien child in a junkyard. And yet in that moment it felt like the most natural thing to do. The mother finally spoke again, her voice quiet. "Why help us?" she asked. Her words were broken, but her meaning was clear. Daniel thought for a moment, then shrugged. "Because you needed it," he answered simply. "And because no one should go hungry." The mother studied him, her silver eyes sharp and unreadable. Then she gave the smallest nod as if acknowledging his kindness. She said nothing more, but Daniel could feel the invisible thread that had just been tied between them. A fragile connection, born in the silence of a junkyard under the moon. That night, Daniel walked away slowly, leaving them to rest in the broken bus. His mind was racing, but his heart was steady. He knew he would come back tomorrow, not out of curiosity, but because something inside him had changed. The sight of that trembling child would not leave his mind. He could not turn away. Not now. And so, without realizing it, Daniel took his first step into a story far greater than his own. A story of trust, survival, and a bond that would one day make them more than strangers, more than friends. A bond that would turn them into a family, a secret routine. The next morning, Daniel could not concentrate on his work. Every time he tried to fix a broken motor or sort through rusted scraps, his mind wandered back to the junkyard bus. He saw the child's hollow eyes again, the way her small hands clutched the bread like it was the most precious thing in the world. He remembered the mother's sharp gaze, a mixture of fear and strength. By evening, his decision was made. He packed extra food into his old backpack: bread, boiled potatoes, and a bottle of water. It wasn't much, but it was all he could spare. His heart pounded as he walked toward the junkyard. What if they had run away? What if soldiers had found them? Or worse, what if they no longer trusted him? The junkyard greeted him with its usual silence. Rusted metal towers stood like ancient giants watching over secrets buried deep within. Daniel moved cautiously toward the broken bus. For a moment it looked abandoned. No sound, no glow. His chest tightened with worry. Then he heard it, a soft laugh, high and light like the tinkling of glass. He froze. The laugh came from inside the bus. Slowly he peeked in. The little alien girl was sitting cross-legged on the floor, her thin fingers drawing shapes in the dust. She looked up and saw him. For a second, fear flickered across her face. Then recognition softened her features. Her eyes lit up and a small smile tugged at her lips. Daniel felt warmth flood through him. He stepped inside carefully and placed the food down. "I brought something," he said softly. The mother appeared from the shadows, her expression still guarded. But she did not raise a weapon this time. She watched silently as her daughter hurried to the food, biting into a potato with eager hunger. The mother's silver eyes shifted back to Daniel, testing him, weighing him. Then she gave the smallest nod. It wasn't approval, but it wasn't rejection either. And so it began, a secret routine. Every day Daniel returned after work with food. Sometimes it was bread, sometimes fruit, sometimes just plain rice. The child always greeted him with shy excitement, her smile growing wider each time. She began to trust him, inching closer, daring to sit beside him as he fixed small scraps of metal into toys. He once shaped a broken spring and a tin lid into a spinning top. When he placed it on the ground and flicked it, the girl gasped in delight. Her laughter filled the junkyard, echoing through the rusted walls like sunlight breaking through clouds. The mother remained cautious. She rarely spoke, but her eyes followed Daniel closely, studying his every move. At night, when the girl slept, she would whisper questions. "Why do you help us? What do you want in return?" Daniel always gave the same answer. Nothing. Just food is food, and kindness costs nothing. Slowly, the sharpness in her eyes began to soften. She never smiled, not fully, but the tension in her shoulders eased when he was near. Days turned into weeks. The junkyard became more than just a place of scraps. It became a secret world, alive with quiet moments of trust. Daniel learned the girl's name, Leora. The mother's name, whispered reluctantly one night, was Serenia. Their words were broken, sometimes hard to understand, but names carried meaning. Daniel repeated them often, making sure he said them right, and each time Leora giggled at his accent. But even as the bond grew, danger lingered. Daniel began noticing strangers asking questions in town. Rumors spread of silver-skinned beings hiding nearby. Hunters were restless, eager for proof. Soldiers patrolled more often near the edges of the city. Daniel's heart tightened each time he thought of discovery. Yet he never told Serenia or Leora. He did not want to scare them. Instead, he carried on the routine, hoping each day would remain safe. One evening, as the sun set in a blaze of red behind the junkyard towers, Leora tugged at Daniel's sleeve. She held out a small flower, wilted but carefully picked from some hidden corner. Her large crystal eyes shone as she pressed it into his hand. "For you," she said in broken words. Daniel's throat tightened. He had given her food, but she had given him something greater, trust. He smiled and tucked the flower carefully into his shirt pocket. "Thank you, Leora," he whispered. Serenia watched from a distance, her expression unreadable. But for the first time, Daniel thought he saw the hint of a smile flicker on her lips before she turned away. That night, as Daniel left the junkyard, his steps were lighter than usual. He realized something important. He was no longer just helping them survive. They were becoming a part of his life, piece by piece, day by day. And deep inside, he knew he could never walk away now. What began as an act of kindness had turned into something deeper, something stronger. A bond was forming, one that neither fear nor danger could easily break. Daniel didn't know what the future held, but he knew one thing for certain. The junkyard was no longer a place of trash and rust. It was now the place where a secret family was being born. Part 3. Danger Lurks. The junkyard had become Daniel's secret world. For weeks he had walked the narrow paths between broken cars and twisted steel with food hidden in his backpack. Every evening, Leora would greet him with her bright smile, and Serenia would watch him with cautious eyes. Slowly, the fear between them had turned into fragile trust. But outside their little world, whispers had started to spread. In the marketplace, Daniel overheard men talking about shadows with glowing eyes near the scrapyard. Hunters joked about catching aliens for money, and soldiers grew restless, eager for something unusual to prove their worth. Each rumor made Daniel's stomach twist. He kept his head low, pretending not to care, but inside he felt the weight of danger pressing closer every day. One evening, Daniel returned to the junkyard later than usual. The sky was already dark and the air was colder than normal. His boots crunched on gravel as he hurried to the broken bus. He expected Leora's cheerful laugh, but instead silence greeted him. "Leora?" he called softly. His voice echoed strangely among the heaps of rust. No answer. A sudden crack of metal startled him. He spun around, gripping his flashlight. But it wasn't Serenia or Leora. At the far edge of the junkyard, two men with rifles were climbing over a pile of scrap. Their heavy boots echoed with each step. Daniel's heart raced. Hunters. He quickly slipped behind a stack of broken washing machines peeking through the cracks. The men scanned the junkyard with sharp eyes, their voices low but clear enough. "They said they saw lights here last night," one muttered. "Probably rats," the other replied. "But if it's true, we'll be rich." They were moving closer to the bus. Panic surged through Daniel. Serenia and Leora were inside. If the men found them, without thinking, Daniel stepped out, pretending to stumble. "Hey, what are you doing here?" he shouted, his voice louder than he felt inside. The hunters froze, surprised. One of them lifted his rifle slightly. "You? What are you doing here at this hour?" Daniel forced a careless laugh, scratching his head. "I work here sometimes, fixing stuff. Nothing valuable left, though. Just junk." He waved his hand toward the piles of rusted metal. "You won't find anything worth your time." The men exchanged a look. One of them stepped forward. "People say there's something strange hiding here." Daniel shrugged. "Strange? Only thing strange here is me spending my nights with trash." He chuckled, forcing himself to sound relaxed. "You believe every story people tell?" The hunters hesitated, but suspicion remained in their eyes. They scanned the piles again. One of them suddenly pointed toward the broken bus. "What about that?" Daniel's chest tightened. "Think fast, that old thing?" He walked quickly in front of them, blocking their view. "Full of rats. Smells terrible. You don't want to waste your time in there. I checked it myself. Nothing but rust and shadows." The men frowned. For a long, tense moment, Daniel thought they would push past him. His palms grew sweaty, his heart pounding like a drum. Then one of them sighed. "This is pointless. Let's go. We'll check the riverside tomorrow." With a grunt, they turned and climbed back over the scrap, disappearing into the night. Daniel exhaled shakily. His legs felt weak, but he forced himself to walk calmly until the hunters were gone. Only then did he rush back to the bus. Inside, Serenia stood in the shadows, holding a metal pipe like a weapon. Leora clung to her mother's side, wide-eyed with fear. "They almost saw you," Daniel whispered urgently. Serenia's eyes burned with suspicion. "Why risk yourself?" she asked sharply. Daniel swallowed hard, then answered with steady words. "Because if they find you, they'll kill you. I couldn't let that happen." Silence hung heavy. Serenia studied him, her silver eyes searching for truth. Finally, she lowered the pipe. Leora ran to Daniel, hugging his leg tightly. Her small voice trembled. "Thank you." Daniel knelt, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. "You're safe, but we have to be careful now." More will come. The days that followed grew tense. Daniel noticed more patrols near the junkyard. Flashlights sometimes cut through the night, voices calling out in the distance. The hunters had not given up. Every visit, Daniel grew more cautious. He changed his path, entered the junkyard from different sides, and kept his ears sharp for danger. Serenia began to trust his warnings, moving Leora deeper into the bus whenever footsteps echoed outside. But even in the shadow of fear, small moments of light remained. Leora continued to laugh at his tin toys, continued to wait for him eagerly each evening. Serenia still watched him with guarded eyes, but she no longer questioned his intentions every time. The bond between them was growing, even as danger crept closer. One night, as Daniel prepared to leave, Serenia stopped him. Her voice was quiet but firm. "If they find us, you must not return. It will destroy you too." Daniel looked at her, his jaw set. "If they find you, I'll be here. I won't run." For the first time, Serenia's eyes softened with something other than suspicion. Perhaps it was trust, or perhaps it was the faint recognition that this human was not like the others who hunted them. As Daniel walked home that night, he felt the weight of what he had just promised. He had stepped into danger willingly, and there was no turning back. The junkyard was no longer just a secret refuge. It was becoming a battlefield, where trust and danger danced side by side, and Daniel knew, deep down, that the storm was only beginning. Trust in stories. The junkyard had become more than a hiding place. It was their secret world of stories, laughter, and fragile hope. But no secret stayed safe forever. For weeks, Daniel noticed strange movements near the scrapyard. Shadows at night, bootprints in the gravel that weren't his. Once he even found a cigarette still burning near the fence. The hunters had not given up. They were circling, waiting for the right moment. Daniel tried not to show his worry in front of Leora. He still brought her toys, still listened to Serenia's quiet songs. But inside he was restless. He had promised them safety, but how long could he keep that promise? The answer came one stormy night. Rain poured from the sky, turning the junkyard into rivers of mud. The wind howled between the towers of scrap, carrying the smell of rust and damp. Daniel hurried through the narrow path, his backpack heavy with food. Lightning flashed, and for a second he thought he saw figures moving along the far wall. His heart pounded. He quickened his steps toward the broken bus. Inside, Serenia and Leora were huddled together, the child trembling from the thunder. When Leora saw Daniel, she leapt into his arms, clinging tightly. He comforted her with a soft smile, but Serenia's sharp eyes were already scanning the darkness outside. "We are not alone," she whispered. Before Daniel could answer, voices echoed across the junkyard. Rough, angry voices. "There! Over there!" Flashlights cut through the rain. Armed men climbed over the heaps of metal, their boots splashing in the mud. Hunters, 5 of them, rifles ready. Daniel's stomach dropped. They had found the bus. Serenia grabbed a metal pipe, her stance fierce. Daniel stepped in front of her. "No," he said quickly. "If you fight now, they'll kill you both. But they will take us." Serenia hissed. "Not if I stop them first." Before she could argue, Daniel stepped out of the bus into the storm. The hunters spotted him immediately. "You again?" one shouted. "We knew you were hiding something." Daniel forced a laugh, though fear clawed at his chest. "Hiding? You think I'd be stupid enough to spend nights in this place with ghosts? It's just me. Nothing here but junk." But the hunters weren't convinced. One of them raised his rifle. "We heard voices." "You're lying." The men spread out, moving closer to the bus. Daniel's pulse quickened. "If they look inside, it's over." He stepped forward, blocking their path. "You're wasting your time. It's just rats and shadows. Go home before the storm buries you in this trash." "Move aside," the leader growled. Daniel's fists clenched. He could feel the storm's fury raging in his veins. When the men tried to push past him, he shoved one back. The fight exploded instantly. The first punch cracked against Daniel's jaw, sending him staggering, but he fought back with desperate strength, slamming his shoulder into another man and knocking him into the mud. A rifle clattered to the ground. Daniel kicked it away before another hunter swung a metal rod at him. The blow grazed his arm, tearing his sleeve and skin. Pain flared, but Daniel held his ground. He wasn't fighting to win, he was fighting to protect. Behind him, he could hear Leora's muffled sobs, Serenia whispering urgently to keep her quiet. That sound gave him strength. Another hunter lunged, but Daniel grabbed a rusted pipe from the ground, swinging it wildly. The metal clashed against a rifle, sparks flying in the rain. He ducked, barely missing a shot that rang out, echoing like thunder. The storm masked the chaos, but inside the junkyard it was a war. Daniel's body ached with every blow, his lungs burning with every breath. Yet he refused to fall. Each time he was knocked down, he rose again, standing between the hunters and the bus. "You'll never touch them," he roared. The leader raised his gun, aiming directly at Daniel. For a moment, everything froze. The rain, the thunder, even Daniel's heartbeat. He knew this was it. But before the trigger could be pulled, a blinding flash lit the junkyard. Serenia stood in the bus doorway, her hand glowing with strange silver energy. The light surged forward, striking the rifle and sending it flying into the mud. The hunters cried out in shock, stumbling back. Daniel's eyes widened. He had never seen anything like it. Serenia's face was fierce, her eyes burning with defiance. "You will not take my child," she shouted, her voice echoing with power. The hunters, shaken and frightened, cursed as they scrambled back through the scrap, dragging their wounded with them. Within moments, they vanished into the storm, their threats carried away by the wind. Silence returned, broken only by the rain. Daniel dropped the pipe, his chest heaving. He was soaked, bruised, bleeding, but alive. Serenia stepped closer, her glowing hand fading. She looked at him, her silver eyes softening in a way he had never seen before. "You shielded us," she whispered. Daniel gave a tired smile. "I told you, you're not alone anymore." Before he could say more, Leora ran out, throwing her arms around him. She pressed her face into his chest, sobbing. "Father," she whispered for the first time. Daniel froze, his heart aching. Slowly, he wrapped his arms around her, holding her close. Serenia watched, her lips trembling, her eyes shining with something between gratitude and sorrow. For the first time, she did not try to correct Leora's words. That night, in the middle of a storm, the bond that had begun with bread in a junkyard grew into something unbreakable. They were no longer just strangers hiding from the world. They were family. The junkyard nights grew colder and the shadows stretched longer. Daniel had grown used to sneaking in with food and leaving quietly when the world outside became too dangerous. Each evening he found himself drawn back, not just because of duty, but because of something deeper, a fragile bond that was slowly shaping between him and the two hidden souls. Leora greeted him as if he were part of her day. Her laughter, once rare and quiet, now rang out like a silver bell in the darkness. She would run to him, clutching his sleeve, eager to see what little surprise he had brought. Sometimes it was fruit, sometimes a toy he had carved out of wood, and sometimes just his company. For her, it was enough. But Serenia remained guarded. She watched Daniel with eyes that never stopped questioning. Every movement he made, every word he spoke, she measured them carefully like a mother who could not afford to gamble with trust. Yet despite her caution, she allowed him closer than before. And slowly she began to speak one night. As Daniel sat repairing a broken flashlight for Leora, Serenia's voice cut through the silence. "You risk much for us," she said softly, her words careful but clear. Daniel looked up, meeting her silver gaze. "It doesn't feel like a risk," he admitted. "It feels right." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Why? Humans fear what they do not know. Many would have given us away. You protect us." Daniel shrugged lightly, though inside he felt the weight of her question. "Maybe because I know what it's like to be alone," he said at last. "And because your daughter deserves better than fear." For the first time, Serenia did not look away. Instead, she studied him in silence as though weighing his soul. Then, in a voice heavy with memory, she began to tell her story. Her words painted pictures Daniel had never imagined. She spoke of a world beyond the stars, a place of rivers that glowed under twin suns, of cities built on mountains that touched the clouds. Her people, she said, were peaceful once, but war had torn everything apart. Invaders came with fire and machines, destroying homes, shattering lives. Serenia's voice trembled only when she spoke of the escape. She and Leora had fled under the cover of smoke, through tunnels that crumbled behind them. They had boarded a ship not meant for war, just survival. "We ran," she whispered. "We left everything. My mate, my people, gone." Leora, who had been playing quietly with the flashlight, leaned against her mother, listening too. Though she did not fully understand, her wide eyes reflected the weight of loss. Daniel sat in silence, his hands still, his heart heavy. He had never heard a story like this, real, raw, filled with pain and distance. For a long moment he could not speak. Then he said quietly, "I'm sorry." Sirenia shook her head. "Do not be sorry. You did not destroy us, but you must know why we hide. If they find us—" She trailed off, her eyes flickering with fear and defiance. Daniel nodded firmly. "Then we won't let them find you." Her brows furrowed. "We?" "Yes," his voice was steady now. "You and Leora are not alone anymore. Not while I'm here." For the first time since he met her, Sirenia's expression shifted. It wasn't a full smile, but the hard edges of her face softened. Her eyes glistened faintly, like moonlight caught on water. That night, after Leora had fallen asleep, Sirenia and Daniel sat in the dim glow of a small lantern he had fixed. She asked him about his world, his life before the junkyard, his dreams, his regrets. Daniel spoke with the same honesty she had shown him. He told her about the parents he lost too young, about the empty house he lived in, about how fixing broken things gave him purpose, even if it was just scrap. "Broken things deserve another chance," he said quietly. "Sometimes they just need someone willing to see value in them." Sirenia listened, and for the first time she laughed softly. It was a sound fragile but beautiful, like crystal chiming in the wind. "Perhaps you see us as broken things," she teased gently. Daniel smiled faintly. "No, not broken. Just lost, and worth saving." From that night on, the distance between them slowly faded. Sirenia no longer stayed hidden in the shadows when Daniel arrived. She began to share more, small pieces of her culture. Lullabies she sang to Leora in a tongue Daniel couldn't understand. And stories of constellations that humans had never seen. And Daniel, in return, shared his world with her. He taught Leora simple games children played in the city. And Sirenia listened quietly as he explained human traditions, laughter sometimes slipping from her lips when she found their customs strange. In those nights, the junkyard became more than a hiding place. It became a place of shared stories where fear loosened its grip and trust took root. But danger never disappeared. Daniel knew the hunters were still searching, their eyes sharp and greedy. He knew whispers still moved through the town like poison. Yet as he sat with Sirenia and Leora, hearing their laughter break the silence of rust and ruin, he felt stronger than his fear. He no longer came only to feed them. He came because they were no longer strangers. They were a part of him now, and though he did not say it aloud, he knew the truth. This was not just a story of survival. It was the beginning of a family, born not from blood, but from trust and shared pain. A fragile family, yes, but one worth protecting at any cost. Choosing family, the storm passed, but its scars remained. The junkyard was soaked, its metal towers dripping rain like broken monuments. Mud covered the ground where Daniel had fought, stained with blood and water. Inside the broken bus, silence ruled. Daniel sat against the wall, his body aching with bruises and cuts. His shirt was torn, his arm still bleeding where the hunter's strike had landed. He tried to smile at Leora, who clung to him, but his strength was fading fast. "You, safe now," he whispered weakly. Sirenia knelt beside him, her face pale but determined. She had seen men fight before, but never like this. Daniel had stood between her family and death, refusing to move even when it meant breaking his own body. He had done what even her own people might not have risked for strangers. "Foolish human," she murmured, yet her hands trembled as she touched his wound. Leora tugged at her mother's arm, tears streaming down her glowing cheeks. "Fix him, Mama, please." Sirenia closed her eyes. The energy within her was weak. She had used much of it to scare the hunters away. But for Daniel, she found a strength she didn't know remained. Her hands began to glow with silver light. Daniel flinched at first, but then warmth spread through his arm. The bleeding slowed, the pain dulled. His skin knit itself together, leaving faint scars where the wound had been. His breath steadied, and he looked at her with disbelief. "You healed me," he whispered. Sirenia's eyes met his, her expression unreadable. "Not fully, but enough." Daniel tried to sit straighter. "You didn't have to." "Yes," she said firmly. "I did." For the first time since they met, Sirenia's walls cracked. Her voice softened, heavy with emotion. "Why, Daniel? Why would you risk everything? You could have stayed away. You could have lived your life safe. Yet you chose us." Daniel's tired eyes softened. "Because no one else would. Because I couldn't watch them take you, and because you're not just strangers to me anymore." He glanced at Leora, who was still hugging his arm, her tiny frame trembling. Then he looked back at Serenia. Family isn't always about blood. Sometimes it's about choice. And I choose you. The words hung in the air, fragile and powerful. Serenia's chest tightened. For so long she had believed they were alone, abandoned on a strange world. But this man, a human, had fought for them, bled for them, and now claimed them as his own. Her lips trembled. "You are strange," she whispered, though her voice carried warmth. Daniel chuckled weakly. "I get that a lot." That night they did not sleep. The rain dripped from the ceiling and thunder rumbled faintly in the distance. Leora curled against Daniel's side, her soft breathing calming the storm inside him. Serenia sat close, her sharp gaze softer than ever. Slowly she began to hum, a low, haunting melody from her world. Daniel didn't understand the words, but the sound was full of comfort, sorrow, and hope. It wrapped around him like a blanket, easing the ache of his bruises. "Is that a song from your home?" he asked quietly. Serenia nodded. "A lullaby. For children who fear the dark." Daniel smiled faintly. "Then it's perfect for tonight." For the first time, Serenia allowed herself to smile. It was small but real, and it reached her silver eyes. In the following days, Daniel's wounds healed slowly under Serenia's care. He still limped, still winced when lifting heavy scrap, but he returned every evening without fail. Leora treated him as if nothing had changed, tugging at his hand, laughing when he showed her new toys. But Serenia watched him differently now. She no longer looked at him as just a helper. She looked at him as something far more dangerous and far more precious. A protector, a part of their fragile circle. One evening, as the sun painted the junkyard in gold and red, Serenia finally spoke what weighed on her heart. "You cannot keep doing this," she said firmly. "If the hunters return, they will kill you. You do not owe us your life." Daniel shook his head. "I've already given part of my life to you. That's not something I regret." Serenia's voice trembled, caught between anger and fear. "You don't understand, my people. We lost everything because of trust. If I lose you too." She stopped herself, unable to finish. Daniel stepped closer, his voice steady. "Then don't think of it as losing me. Think of it as me standing with you. As family." The word echoed between them. Family. Serenia looked at him, searching his face, and saw no hesitation there, only sincerity. That night, Leora called him father again, her small voice full of innocence. Daniel hugged her gently, his eyes stinging with tears. Serenia didn't correct her this time. She didn't pull her away. She only watched, silent, her heart heavy with emotions she could no longer deny. For the first time since fleeing her dying world, she allowed herself to believe in something she thought lost, hope. But even as they built this fragile new bond, the shadows of danger still lingered beyond the junkyard walls. Hunters had been frightened once, but fear often turned into anger. Soldiers were still searching. The world outside would not stop chasing them. Yet in that moment, as the three of them sat together in the broken bus, the storm felt far away. What mattered was not the danger waiting outside, but the choice they had made inside, to stand together not as strangers but as family. And for Daniel, that choice was no longer a burden. It was the only path he wanted, a new beginning. The junkyard no longer felt safe. The night of the storm had changed everything. The hunters had seen too much, and Serenia's powers had been revealed. Daniel knew it was only a matter of time before they returned, this time with more men, perhaps even soldiers. He could not allow Serenia and Leora to stay here any longer. Daniel spent the next few days moving cautiously, gathering supplies in secret. He bought food, blankets, and tools, hiding them in his backpack. He mapped out back roads in his head, remembering the abandoned farmhouse he had once passed while searching for spare parts. It was far from town, half buried in trees, forgotten by everyone. It could be a new refuge, but leaving the junkyard meant leaving behind the one place where they had first trusted each other. It meant stepping into the unknown again. One evening, as the sun sank behind the rusted towers, Daniel sat with Serenia and Leora in the broken bus. The air was heavy, filled with unspoken fear. "They will come back," Daniel said quietly. "Hunters, soldiers, maybe worse. This place won't protect you anymore." Serenia's silver eyes narrowed. "Where then? Where can we run? Every world has hunters." Daniel met her gaze firmly. "There's an old farmhouse, hidden far away. It's not perfect, but it's safer than here. We can build something there together." The word hung in the air. Together. Leora tilted her head, her small voice breaking the silence. "Will you come too?" Daniel smiled softly and placed his hand over hers. "Of course. I won't leave you." The decision was made. That night, under the cover of darkness, they gathered their few belongings. Daniel carried food and tools. Serenia carried the precious crystals from her world, tiny glowing stones she had hidden carefully, and Leora carried her favorite tin toy Daniel had made. The rain had stopped, but the ground was still wet and slippery. Daniel led them through narrow paths, avoiding the main road. Every sound made him tense, the cry of an owl, the snap of a branch, but they moved quietly, shadows in the night. Hours later, when the first light of dawn touched the sky, they reached the farmhouse. It stood half-ruined, its roof sagging, its walls cracked. Vines crept over the broken windows and dust coated the wooden floors. But to Daniel it was beautiful. It was hidden, forgotten, and most of all, it was theirs now. "This will be home," Daniel said, his voice steady. Leora's eyes sparkled with wonder as she ran through the empty rooms, laughing as her small footsteps echoed. Serenia stood at the doorway, her arms crossed, her expression doubtful. "This is broken," she said quietly. Daniel chuckled. "So was the junkyard. But we fixed it piece by piece. We can fix this too." For the first time, Serenia did not argue. Instead, she touched the wall gently, her expression softening. Perhaps she saw what Daniel saw. Not the ruin it was, but the home it could become. Days turned into weeks. Together, they worked to rebuild the farmhouse. Daniel repaired the roof with scavenged wood. Serenia used her strange energy to strengthen the walls, and Leora filled the empty rooms with laughter. They cooked meals over a small fire, shared stories under the stars, and sang songs that blended two worlds into one. For Daniel, it was unlike anything he had ever known. His life of loneliness had been replaced with something far greater. When he woke each morning, he no longer woke to silence. He woke to Leora's laughter and Serenia's soft voice calling his name. One evening, as they sat outside watching the stars, Leora crawled into Daniel's lap. Her crystal-like eyes sparkled as she whispered, "Father, tell me a story." Daniel's heart ached with warmth. He wrapped his arms around her, meeting Serenia's gaze across the fire. She said nothing, but her eyes were softer than ever, filled with gratitude and something deeper, trust. He began to tell a story not of heroes or kings, but of a man who found a family in the unlikeliest of places. But the world outside was not blind. Rumors still spread in distant towns, whispers of silver-skinned beings and strange lights. The hunters had not stopped searching. Daniel knew danger would always linger just beyond the horizon. Yet as he looked at Serenia and Leora, he realized something important. Danger no longer frightened him. Because now he had something worth fighting for. One night, as the stars burned bright above, Serenia finally spoke the words she had carried silently for so long. "You have given us more than food, Daniel. You gave us safety. You gave us hope." Her voice trembled, but she did not look away. "You gave us family." Daniel's chest tightened. He reached out, taking her hand gently. "No, you gave me family. I was lost too until I found you." For a moment, silence wrapped around them, broken only by Leora's sleepy breathing. Serenia's lips curved into the faintest smile, soft and real. The farmhouse became their sanctuary, a place where a human, an alien mother and her child, lived not as fugitives, but as family. The world outside might never understand. Hunters might return, soldiers might march. But inside those walls, love had built something stronger than fear. It was not the end of their story. It was only the beginning. A new beginning written not in blood but in trust, courage, and the choice to be family against all odds.